I'm Fatheree.
This is Dave.
And this is Tex-Trek. So welcome back to the Starship Texas for the 41st installment of the Tex-Trek podcast. And this is a really special episode for us because we are going to be talking about my favorite Star Trek show, Deep Space Nine. This is the 25th anniversary of DS9, and I've been waiting a long time to really dive deep into it.
I barely even know what you're talking about because I didn't watch Deep Space Nine in the 1990s. That was my Babylon 5 time, and I was shunning it. And oh, by the way, Babylon 5 now streaming on Amazon Prime,
yes.
So you should check that out. Everybody can agree on that. But I have actually been dabbling in Deep Space Nine, and what I've seen so far seemed pretty cool.
Hold up, Dave? What is that pin to you on your chest? It looks like there's something on your shirt there.
Isn't it like? Well, you've got one of them too.
What the hell is happening? Is Jason Isaacs and Donald Trump in a Twitter war?
Something's coming in on the scanners. This is weird. I think it's trying to hail us?
Huh. Well, put that shit on screen.
Don't boss me.
What's up, Prime Universe bitches?
Damn, Lorca was right. This Prime Universe is bright as hell. I need to pop my shades on.
For the love of the great bird of the galaxy, I think these are intruders into our universe.
You mean like hide your wife, hide your kids kind of intruders?
No, man, these are like dimension hoppers. Cosmic interlopers. Mirror universe by the looks of them.
What? You think they're the ones who beamed these little things onto... Hey, you know what? You know what these look like back on TOS? The agonizers that they had? Precisely, you Prime Universe cretin. And now you shall learn the true meaning of pain. No, that's okay.
Agonizers, activate!
Why am I seeing Spock's brains in my brain?
It's like I'm in the episode Code of Honor! Yes. With these agonizers, we will force you to re-experience only the worst episodes of your universe's Star Trek shows.
We can't take it anymore.
Okay, that's enough.
Maybe just a little bit more.
All in due time. What the hell, man? Why did you show up and start torturing us? We just want to talk about some Star Trek.
Yeah.
Oh, we know all about your little podcast. We've been checking out Tex-Trek from Mirror, Texas. Mirror, Texas? Yes, where our governors turned presidential candidates have the highest IQs. The tacos and the barbecue suck, and we're known for being the least friendly state.
Let's just say we've not been too impressed with Tex-Trek, specifically with how you represent Terrans and our universe on your little show. Well, yeah, your universe is fascist, xenophobic nonsense. We're like getting enough of that in the real world. We don't really want to spend any more time talking about it. What a load!
Are you going to give us that Terran privilege line?
You know, it's like Terrans are the only race it's okay to be prejudiced against.
Yeah, the universe will bend over backwards for any Andorian or Klingon.
Or Ferengi.
Yeah, but nothing for the Terrans.
True.
No one cares about the Terrans. Yo, y'all are, like, really defensive. But, I guess I should have expected that level of Terran fragility. Silence, you two. We have beamed these agonizers onto you as part of our noble effort to force you to honor our glorious Terran Empire and cover our respectable place in Star Trek history. Terran Empire, represent!
I mean, shit, didn't we just talk about a whole bunch of mirror stuff with, like, the disco episodes? There was tons of mirror stuff in that, and we talked about it.
Totally, we've already spent a lot of time on the mirror universe.
Fatheree! The MC and Janeway is a lizard! Oh, no! It's threshold! Oh, thanks for the reminder!
No problem! Well, now that I think about it, we could talk about the Terran Empire we saw in the original series and in Mirror Mirror, where the mirror universe got its start, and also on Enterprise, when we saw the mirror universe there in the Terran Empire.
Oh, man. I guess we're doing this thing.
I'm Mirror Fatheree.
This is Mirror Dave.
And this is Tex-Trek. Well, I guess we're talking about the Mirror Universe today.
Don't say it passive-aggressive like that. They'll agonize us.
Sorry. I meant to say it all excited. Like, hey, I guess we're talking about the Mirror Universe today. Isn't that great?
Look, we should be able to be excited about it. The Mirror Universe episodes are, overall, I would say, some of the best episodes that Trek has had. And it's a super ingenious concept that everybody afterward ripped off.
Yeah. This has been a major staple of pop culture ever since the original series episode Mirror Mirror, where it all got started.
What was that show a few years ago where they had mirror people in it from an alternate dimension? I didn't watch it.
Oh yeah, it was like it was on one of these new streaming services that all the kids
thought it was just on Sci-Fi or whatever.
I thought it was on like Amazon Prime or Hulu or something.
No, it was on Sci-Fi. It was that one. It's so dramatic that we can't remember it. Anyway, they had Mirror Universe counterpart. It's that one that J.J. Abrams produced.
Fringe?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I never watched that. I've heard good stuff though.
I know we'd work it out eventually. Yeah, I heard it was good.
Yeah, it's on my bucket list.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of people also will remember the episode of South Park, I think in season 3. So way back in like the year 2000. When they had the Mirror Universe kids that were all assholes except for the Mirror Universe Cartman, who was a really nice guy.
Right.
And they all had the goatees like Spock has. In this episode we're going to talk about Mirror Mirror.
Is Earth 2 from DC, with the Evil Verse, is that influenced by it, you think? Where Luthor's the only hero? That goes at least back to, the mid-'80s Crisis is where I first knew about it, but had it been around, since the 70s?
I think it had been around before 1967, when Mirror Mirror originally
Really?
aired.
Alright, let's look into this.
But yeah, if I'm wrong, please post a comment saying I'm an idiot.
Yeah. I'm going to say that idea was not in use until later. That's just my theory. I could be wrong. I'm going to bet the 70s is when it came around post these amazing Mirror episodes.
Well, we'll find out.
Certainly the concept originated with Jerome Bixby, the writer of Mirror Mirror, who was a sci-fi guy who had even written a short story that inspired the whole thing. Are we going to talk about that now, or do we want to talk about chronologically?
Let's just go ahead and talk about Mirror Mirror a little bit now, because that is where it all got started.
Okay, we'll just talk about the concept before getting into without getting into heavy plot stuff. So I had to look up the story that Jerome Bixby wrote in 1954 was called One Way Street. Do you know about this?
I don't know the details, but I have heard of it.
What little
I read it on like a wiki page at one point.
Is that it's not so much everything is opposite as almost like everything is different. So he has a car crash and wakes up in this other world. It's kind of almost the same way if you ever read like old John Carter, Warlord of Mars and all that. How he originally traveled there by just looking at the moon and kind of going into like Mars and going into like a trance-like state, and it was almost like his soul just left him. It was a kind of hazy process. They didn't go into a lot of detail. But he wakes up in this other world where everything is different, and he mentions I think, what was it, some novelist, and they're like, oh, we don't know who that is. But it was like another novelist wrote some famous novel. Some of it is a little bit weird. It's almost like they just switched around names and stuff. But he ends up, I think the big emotional crux of it is he ends up reconnecting with his wife, who he's estranged from in the Prime universe. And becomes like a known celebrity because he tells his story, and I think people believe him, and people know about that he's from another universe. Maybe he even writes books about it, but some scientists eventually figure out a way to get him back. And at the very end, he's saying goodbye to his mirror wife, who is still passionately connected to him. And she kind of does that thing where she's like, I'm coming with you, right at the very end. Pulls a George out.
Like in Star Trek 4, when Kirk is beaming back onto the Bird of Prey.
Yes, just like in Star Trek 4. And so she travels back with him, and I believe the sort of twist ending of the story, which I've not read, I only read a synopsis of it, is that they land in yet a third universe. They don't get back, and so this was not something that's ever really particularly explored in the Star Trek way, but they end up in a world where, like, technology is different, and it's sort of I guess it's sort of maybe a mixture of hopefulness, like, well, we're going to at least work together, and they are wondering about what happened to their counterparts, and, if they're on some fourth one or whatever. But anyway, that is One Way Street that inspired it.
So is that how it ends, where they're just on, like, this thing?
Yep.
That is a very, like, old...
it's Twilight Zone-ish.
Yeah, it's that science fiction type of story where you explore your neat concept, and you don't really worry about resolution. You just do some kind of twist or gut punch at the end to give the reader their satisfaction that
as
way.
A short story. Yeah, exactly. If anybody ever reads, I think it's called 8 o'clock in the morning. It's the story that inspired John Carpenter's They Live. It is written. It's a very short story, maybe 10 pages or something like that, and it also has a sort of gut punch ending that comes from that tradition. But anyway, I believe there's one thing in there where there's somebody who has a goatee, so that but it's just it's kind of random. It's my neighbor has a goatee and he's a little different. He's not evil. He's just different. Everybody kind of comes out a little bit different. So anyway, he clearly tweaked it quite a bit for Mirror Mirror, where it became this thing about almost the kind of the idealism. I feel like 60s idealism versus their vision of fascism. And even to the point where Kirk got to argue the merits of good, essentially, versus the merits of evil, which is crazy and is something only Star Trek and sci-fi can do. And it's one of the reasons why I've got a list of reasons. And I don't know when we talk about this. I want to throw this out. I've got a list of reasons why I think that the concept has stood the test of time and why people like it.
Okay. We should save that for last when we close out the show. Yeah. But I guess let's go ahead and get into the story of Mirror Mirror. Yes. And it begins with the landing party of Kirk, McCoy, Scotty, and Uhura beaming up after a failed attempt to negotiate, I guess, a mining contract to mine some dilithium on a planet of pacifists who want nothing to do with people who might use their resources for violence.
Yep. Kirk makes a good pitch, and the guy's like, hey, we respect that you could take it from us, and you're not. And Kirk does say something like, consider that when you give this further thought, which almost sounds like a threat, by the way. We could do it if we had to.
Yeah, you better consider that.
But he didn't say it that way.
I never interpreted it that way.
No, he was meant to represent I think, how America wanted to see itself in the 60s.
Yes, which Star Trek always did on the original series. But yeah, they beam up, there's an ion storm, and instead of ending up on the USS Enterprise, they're on the ISS Enterprise, a warship of the Terran Empire.
Remember, real quick, ISS is...
the Imperial starship.
Right.
Or spaceship,
right.
I guess.
And they're they're in that sort of piratical costume that everybody has in the Mirror Universe that marks them as evil. They're pirates. And Kirk very coolly just rolls with it. He's got a few seconds to think about it because Mirror Spock, although he clearly looks different and all this, and Kirk doesn't just go what's with that crazy beard? That would have given him away. But he is, Mirror Spock is immediately he's something went wrong with the transport. And I don't remember if it's before or after he agonizes Mr. Kyle, the transporter chief, but Kirk picks up on it, and he starts role-playing it immediately, yes, he's something was wrong, and he kind of uses the almost botched transport to kind of cover up that he needs some time to figure out what's going on. He even has Dr. McCoy. He's like, yes, Dr. McCoy, why don't you take a look at all of us, which I thought was really sly of him.
And the thing that I always questioned, though, Even when I was a kid watching this. Sorry, that's my dog snoring. Please don't agonize us.
I think that the audience and our captors can roll with a snoring pug.
But she's named after an emperor in the Terran.
Oh my god, that's
Empire,
right. That if
so
anything will buy us brownie points with our newfound Mirror Universe masters, it's that. Or they'll despise that we named a lowly dog and bastardized their empress. But we'll find out when we get back to talking with them.
But back to Mirror. The thing that I always kind of questioned was, is it practical that Kirk would pick up on this so quickly and be able to come up with an excuse to pull everyone to the side before anyone would be like, whoa, what the hell's going on? Captain, why don't you have sleeves? Why does Spock have a beard? Why are we torturing Mr. Kyle?
Right.
But you have to forgive it to move the story along.
It's a little bit of that. And, I will say this in a sort of meta way. Trek has seen duplicates of Kirk and other weird
they've seen a bunch of
stuff.
Weird shit.
Yeah. And
for all you know, anytime you beam up, it might be you don't know what to expect.
That's
so
right.
You're going to be.
Am I going to be a plant
that?
person?
Yeah.
I don't know. And so go on. What else? What's our big things in the episode? They do manage to get to the side.
But yeah, Kirk basically figures out that we must be in a parallel universe.
Right after, so you mentioned this when we watched it recently. A lot happens fast. When they come back from the cold open, he's doing his captain's log. He narrates and tells you that we seem to be, in a universe where was it like violence and assassination or force or whatever dominates. It's a deadly reflection of the emperor of the world that we know. Now, he doesn't know that he's in literally another universe, but he knows that they've somehow gone to a place that is a twisted version, an Alice in Wonderland version of their own world. So in case you, the viewer, and watching it, didn't pick up on what's going on, Kirk literally he just spells it out for you in his first captain's log.
And that's another one of those weird tropes they did in the original series a lot, and other shows, but...
Well, that he would be doing a captain's log that seemed to, as if he was narrating it literally while he's still in the transporter room with evil Spock.
Yeah, and I mean, like, the idea at the time, it seemed like a really cool device, because a lot of people watch TV flipping channels, and if they flipped on to whatever channel Star Trek was on, and they had a nice little convenient recap telling them what was going on, they might be more inclined to stick around and watch the rest of the episode.
Arguably, there's a few other points in the show where they essentially make the same point about, like, kind of remind you of what's going on. I thought it's interesting that I couldn't actually quite remember if you ever saw the four other Mirror crew members over in the Prime universe, and you do just briefly.
Yes, when Spock is tossing them into the brig.
Yeah. They make the point, they don't mention this until the very end, that essentially civilized people can fake being barbaric without too much trouble, but barbarians cannot fake being civilized.
Yeah. Which is a very realistic thing and helps sell the episode.
Yeah.
And I also like Spock.
They're actually, for all that, and this is one of the things I kind of want to talk about, for all that there is like this sort of campy surface to it of, evil goateed Spock and everybody gets to play evil and it's super fun to watch people do this. There are some deeper ideas at work here, and they're spelled out in the DS9 episodes. They come up for sure in this first TOS episode. I would say maybe the least is sort of explored in Enterprise. I feel that's more of like the fun one because it's all evil all the time.
Yeah.
But it's not by no means without merits. But there are some deeper concepts at work here. Some sci-fi stuff to talk about.
And after Kirk, lets everyone in on, okay, they can figure this out. We're in a parallel universe. And by the way, like, I got a retcon of how, or a possible no prize if you take in the retroactive continuity now that we know that the events of Star Trek Discovery took place before the original series. So we know that people on Discovery know about the Mirror Universe. They're all like sworn to secrecy during season 1. Someone could have blabbed, or there could have been rumors
Not just
about
Discovery,
this parallel
like,
universe.
upper echelon people had to know about it because Sarek and a bunch of other people signed off on Mirror Georgiou taking over.
Yeah.
So high-ranking Starfleet people knew it. Presumably, it's kind of sealed away and redacted and all that.
Kirk might have heard about this.
But you might have heard about it.
Yeah.
Especially since Kirk was a big old cheater on everything. He probably just hacked into the files and read up on all this shit.
At the same time he was cheating on the Kobayashi Maru.
Yeah. He's like, oh, it's interesting, Mirror Universe, I'll keep that in mind in case I ever beam there. But yeah, it's actually not the craziest, that's not a super crazy retcon that Kirk might have known about it.
So that's what I choose to believe in my head canon.
I think Kirk's just quick on the uptake.
Well, I think he's kind of a Mary Sue, like all the captains in Star Trek, and can just do whatever the story needs him to do.
Damn right.
But anyways,
they have to kind of stay undercover.
Yeah, and the things that they notice that are different. For one, like people like Mr. Kyle get tortured if you make a mistake.
Yep.
They say that Sulu is chief of security, and he runs the security personnel like the ancient Gestapo.
Yep. Mr. Scott makes that observation, and in case you weren't picking up on enough that this was meant to be a fascist vibe, they overtly throw out Nazi fascism references several times.
Yeah, and the other interesting thing is that they assassinate higher-ranking officers to move up in rank.
Right.
And we see Chekhov attempts to assassinate Captain Kirk, and
it goes poorly?
It does not work out well for him. He gets sent to the booth, because not only do they have agonizers, like me and Dave currently have attached to us, but they also are torturing people in an entire booth dedicated to agony.
It'd be terrible, and no one should ever do that. That's horrible. That's the worst thing ever. But my brother and I used to joke that the worst thing in the world in the Mirror Universe would be that it was like an old telephone booth where you had to put in like quarters to torture yourself. Then they'd like give you a pocket full of quarters and make you keep putting them in to torture yourself. Anyway, that's my brother I was talking about, Matt. Okay. It's not some random person. But anyway, yes. Another iconic moment, by the way, for young Chekhov being tortured. I mean, one of his many scenes in which he's tortured over the years in Star Trek.
And we also find out that in this universe it's common for the captain of the ship to keep I think they actually use the term captain's woman.
Totally, yeah. And
she is, I believe the character's name is Marlena Moreau?
Oh, I think so. I'm going to say attractive actress.
Yes, gorgeous woman. And
actually a pretty larger role for
she has a very meaty role.
Yeah, for a female walk-on role, she actually gets a lot to do as she is kind of torn between. She's got conflicts of interest. She will eventually find out what's going on and have to decide whether she has any loyalty to Kirk as a concept, almost. She has ambitions just like everybody else in the Mirror Universe. It seems like ambition drives almost everything there, and she's got to decide whether to help or hurt. She kind of falls into the femme fatale role with a bit of a heart of gold.
And she doesn't. It takes her a while to figure out. Like, she doesn't really put it together till the very end. She has her suspicions, but.
Yeah.
She thinks that Kirk is her Kirk. And so through her we find out more about this universe and about that universe's Kirk. Yep. He became captain by assassinating Captain Pike.
Right.
So nice continuity there. Way back in season 2 of Star Trek, they were already starting to value some of the canon.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And he was able to be so successful because he had discovered this alien device called the Tantalus Field.
Which does not have a Prime Universe counterpart.
That we know of.
It's more like just... right. But it suggests that... it kind of furthers the notion that, well, when we first see them, we find out that the very aliens that Kirk was trying to be all peaceful and negotiate with in the Prime Universe, that they're like, well, they wouldn't negotiate with us, so we're just going to scourge their planet and burn it to a cinder. Which is kind of the time clock throughout the whole episode. Kirk has to keep putting it off and putting it off. But the Tantalus Field is a little bit suggests that, well, yeah, they see something, an alien civilization, and they exploit it or they destroy it. So it fits in with what they're planning to do to this planet, that to them it's their only purpose is whatever use they can be. So he found this alien device somewhere, and instead of having it analyzed check for danger, maybe put in a museum somewhere. They're like, oh, I'm going to use this to assassinate people.
Yeah, and basically all it is, it's like a TV screen that lets you see anywhere. I guess we only see them use it on other areas of the ship. So they might just have a limited range. But you basically can like look around, look at your target, you see someone you want to get rid of, you press a button, and they conveniently are apparently erased from the universe. They vanish.
Yeah. I'm going to assume that the view screen and all that was just kind of the practical way that it operated. But the Tantalus field, I mean, for all we know, it was sending out nanotechnology machines that undid a person at a molecular level.
Yeah, it could be anything.
But yeah, point being that basically he had the perfect assassination device. All he has to do is pull him up on the view screen, and what we would think in modern times is like click on him. But really, it just seems like you press a button and somehow the machine knows who you're thinking of.
Yeah, completely untraceable.
Yep.
Which would be pretty cool if you're someone willing to spill some blood and kill your enemies.
Right. It's like that. You can press this button and get $1 million, but somewhere someone will die. It's like a much more directed version of that.
And Kirk finds himself in trouble though because the planet that they're at, the Hulkan people, the name of the aliens on there. Because in this universe, they also did not want to turn over their dilithium. Which, interesting, the Hulkans seem to be the same in both universes. Yeah. There's not really an alternate.
One thing that we'll talk about, and I find amusingly, was like in the very last episode of the Deep Space Nine Mirror Universe, you've got, is it Quark's brother? Is it Rom?
Yeah.
Who is trying to figure out how the rules work
of the mirror universe,
and hilariously is like, well, like shouldn't he would have been like, well, shouldn't they be super, instead of being super pacifist, shouldn't they be super aggressive in this universe? But the mirror universe, you can't like necessarily look for that kind of perfect consistency, which is what Rom discovers. Yeah, they seem about the same. They're apparently born to be victims. Poor bastards.
And we'll get to that if we were talking about Deep Space Nine in the future.
Right.
The Hulkans are supposed to be exterminated. Those are the orders Kirk is given by Starfleet Command.
Yep.
And he's obviously stalling because Kirk's a good guy, doesn't want to do it.
Raising eyebrows, you might say.
Yeah, raising one particular mirror universe eyebrow.
Right.
But because it's mirror universe, like the Spock should be famous for like lowering his eyebrow. They're going to talk about like Rom's interpretation. Yeah,
that's right.
Universe. But this puts mirror universe Spock in a dilemma because even though he's part of this evil Starfleet that serves the Terran Empire, he is still very logical and calculated and doesn't have the ambition of some of the other people who just want to like move their way up to the captaincy.
Right.
He knows that if Kirk is killed for not following his orders, it'd be his job as first officer to assassinate him and become the new captain. He doesn't want to do that because then he'll become a big target.
Right. I don't know if he ever explicitly says it, but maybe not. Maybe touches on it in the very end. But presumably his logic sees the use of force as the necessary way to keep order. And arguably that's true in the mirror universe. We see that they always seem to, even when they're able to kind of rein things in, that it always reverts back to savagery. No offense to our hosts.
None at all.
But it does seem to always happen. But I think that Spock's notion was like, hey, you need an iron fist to rule the horrible people. And in the mirror universe, maybe that's true. We will see that, which we'll get to in a minute, like Kirk's, the changes that he perhaps, that we know he does trigger the chain reaction of, don't necessarily stick. You could argue whether or not it was ultimately for the better or not, but it's a tough universe, is what I'm saying.
Well, let's go ahead and get to kind of like the third act of the episode.
Yep.
Sulu is a major asshole in this universe.
Yep.
It's very interesting that
Great time for George Takei, though. He gets so much fun.
And he has like this cool scar on his face that makes him look more menacing.
He's all leering and stuff. He looks like, like in the original, like in West Side Story, when like somebody's got a switchblade out and they're like all in somebody's face. He's got that leer.
And it was also, he was sexually harassing Uhura at work.
Yeah.
So...
Yeah, I'm sure that was frowned upon. In no way, shape, or form.
But it's interesting.
And by the way, we should touch on at some point, we got to touch on the sexuality of the mirror universe, because it's in every single version, whether it's kind of the exploitive pulp qualities, or occasionally kind of countering expectations on that. But very often it falls a little bit into like 30s, 40s pulp sci-fi notions.
It's interesting to see Sulu clearly as a heterosexual... Well, no, take that back. Not clearly as a heterosexual. I'll explain myself a little bit. But clearly, coming on to Uhura.
Yeah.
And we know from the Kelvin timeline that depiction of Sulu is in a same-sex marriage.
Yep.
And there are some moments in the Prime timeline where Sulu has like some heterosexual moments. We know that he was... came off as aroused when he saw the Klingon woman in Star Trek 5.
Right.
Him and Chekhov were checking out.
Yep.
But I didn't come up with this on my own. Someone else said, like, no, here's your explanation. Stop worrying about it. He's just a bisexual. And if you think about that, that actually makes the most sense to explain every universe, every depiction of his orientation.
Yeah.
That totally works.
Yeah,
so that's
works.
my headcanon on that.
He's no, whatever the case, he's for sure a creeper in the mirror universe. He's a scumbag like everybody else is. But presumably he potentially, had he wanted, could have harassed perhaps Mr. Kyle that way, and then agonized him if he turned down his advances. I'm going to assume that there's...
Now, that would be really harassy at work.
But yeah, we didn't get to see that scene. Audiences weren't ready for that yet in the 60s, and so he does a traditional harass the woman. And Uhura, Nichelle Nichols gets to also have a great scene in there too, of course.
But Sulu's he's kind of the primary villain of the episode.
He is. And
because he wants to assassinate both Kirk and Spock in the Takeover. And so now that he's aware of this conflict between the two of them, his goal is to make it look like that they killed each other, and then he'll get command of the Enterprise.
Yep.
And Spock knows...
Everybody in this universe is ready to, like, any assassination, they will quickly, like, well, how can we turn this to our advantage? How can I make it look like they killed each other? They're on the ball.
Spock is on to Sulu over the course of the episode, and he tells him, if you do anything against me, if you kill me, remember that I have Vulcans who serve under me on the screen. Like, the way he says it is like real...
Oh yeah, he's like I have my own, like secret assassins or whatever, and he's like, and some of them are Vulcans.
Yeah.
And it clearly, Mr. Sulu is like, oh shit.
So that makes you wonder, like, what are Vulcans like in this universe? They sound like they must be pretty scary.
Yeah, I'm gonna assume that in pursuit of logic, they would be like, no torture is too horrible. No, no payback is too harsh if it instills the logical order on things. Whatever it is, it's left completely unspoken. It's just up to your imagination. But if it's enough to scare Sulu, it's got to be bad.
And so they figure out a way to rework the transporter, beam back to their correct universe. Good thing that they had Scotty with them, so you can figure all this shit out.
Sure. A little bit of Deus Ex Machina. And they've got a timeline. They're like, the field of whatever field is dissipating. If we don't do it within the next 10 hours.
Ion storm.
Right. If we don't do it within the next 12 hours, then we're going to never be able to get back. So that's their clock, as well as the
ticking
Hawkins.
Clock of having to take care of the Hawkins before Spock takes care of them.
One of the things is, one of the reasons that I had some issues with Star Trek Next Generation when I was first watching it was that the tension level didn't ratchet up the way they used to on the old show. They were very good at usually having like an A plot where they were trying to solve something, but there was usually some B plot that really had created a time factor that they had to deal with. A lot of episodes had multiple sort of things running like that, and I was a little disappointed that it was just one of the things that bugged me about Next Generation. Now I can look back and appreciate the sort of deeper exploration of a concept that they do, but just as an aside, it was one of the issues I had.
TOS leaned more melodramatic.
Sure. It was more pulp. More pulp.
But they have like this really cool boss fight with Spock in Sick Bay.
Oh man. It's Spock versus everyone.
Yeah, and I love that because it's like, oh, he has the Vulcan strength, and so it's like a room full of people trying to fight him.
Yeah, so I believe one of the all-time great moments is when, I guess, like, Kirk gets a shot on him, and he looks back with this look like... It's like when Hulk Hogan would Hulk out. He's like... It's
you
like,
done
oh,
fucked
no, you
up,
didn't.
son.
Absolutely. And then he just backhands the shit out of Kirk and knocks him across the room. But, like, that look on his face, so good.
And
so good.
you think he's the boss fight, but then you have, like, the surprise boss fight when Sulu comes in with his Gestapo security guys.
Yep.
But luckily you had Marlena was helping her lover Kirk, not knowing what he was up to, but she used the Tantalus field to get rid of some of those guys.
Mm-hmm.
She left Sulu still standing. Kirk had to defeat him himself.
These Mirror Universe episodes, by the way, are they have a high casualty rate. They work a lot like in Marvel, what would be a What If comic, or in DC, the Elseworlds comics, where they're like, it doesn't necessarily, we don't have to worry about this being an ongoing series, so we'll kill people off.
Yeah.
And later Mirror shows will, of course, do the same.
And before that they can make their return to the Prime Universe, Bones, being the compassionate humanitarian that he is,
right.
He's like, even though this Mirror Spock is more of an asshole than our Spock, I still gotta save him, Jim.
Yeah, he's like hemorrhaging or whatever, and he's like, I need a few minutes to do it, even if it risks us not getting back.
Because they broke a skull on his skull.
Was it a skull? I thought it was like some kind of vase.
I thought it was like a model of like a human skull or something that was like in the sick bay, and they break it on his head.
Well, I like that idea, so I'm going to say you're right.
So Spock is Mirror Spock is getting treated by Bones. Everyone else makes a dash for the transporter room. Spock recovers. He's like, what the hell is going on? Mind melds with Bones, learns about the Prime Universe, and then confronts the rest of the folks.
The mind meld is such a good plot device, by the way, I'm going to say it. It so often moves things forward like that. They did it on Discovery, too.
Trek's used it pretty well over the years.
Mm-hmm. But it also, like, Spock... He takes McCoy hostage. He's ready to like shut down their entire operation, but you can see that I don't know if I'd say like what stops him. Does he stop himself? Does he say like clearly you're not meant to be in this universe, or is it only like the Tantalus field threat that breaks him at first?
What do you mean? What stops?
He shows up in the transporter room holding McCoy hostage.
Yeah.
And how does that situation resolve? I'm just suddenly blanking.
Because Kirk makes the argument of how the Terran Empire is illogical and it's not sustainable.
Okay, that was Spock had not turned McCoy loose yet.
I don't think so.
Okay, right, and he makes an impassioned plea for it, which Spock is probably liable to give a little bit of extra thought to because he would be dead if not for the mercy, essentially, of somebody from the Prime universe.
He's thinking no one in my universe would have hit me on the head and then not let me die from the injury. So this is really weird.
Right, and so worth paying attention to. Vulcans like to apparently dissect any concept, no matter whether they're evil or not. And so he hears Kirk out, and Kirk makes an interesting argument that essentially, well, he asks Spock, he's like, how long can this empire sustain itself? And he gets back a awesomely Spock answer, and he's like got a specific years set, like 140 years or something.
So 0.345 years or whatever.
And Kirk argues that all the death and destruction that they'll accrue in that time is essentially such a waste of resources that it's illogical. Which I thought was an interesting, like, Kirk himself making a logical argument to be good, to work with people. And it seems like maybe he gets through to Spock.
Yeah, and then when he decides...
We won't know until other mirror shows tell us, but we know he does.
And he leaves him with Marlena and the Tantalus field. So
right.
He's saying, she has a weapon that will make you unstoppable. You can take over this universe and reform it.
Yeah.
And and Spock, he still is a little skeptical... And
he gives him a non-committal. What is it, Mister?
Well, before we get to that, the line I really liked was when Spock says, "One man can't summon the future, or a man alone can't summon the future."
Yep.
And Kirk tells him, "But the right man can change the present."
Mm-hmm. That's some seriously good scripting.
And then Spock closes it on, Captain Kirk, I shall consider it.
Yeah, which is a good like way to end on a sort of happy note. But there is always the question of like how responsible are you for like the whole universe of fucked upness that is the mirror universe when you go over there. Like he just gave a guy who has doubtless butchered people, would be about to butcher the Hawkins, and for all we know, to show that everything was back to normal, just went ahead and killed all the Hawkins right after he left. And he gives him this super weapon, and he's like, I hope you'll do good with it, but he's counting on that Spock is logical enough to do it, and he's right.
When you make the argument that a lot of the episodes end with, you could question, like, well, is that really going to work out? Did Kirk do the right thing, or is it all going to go to shit? And we never find out most of the time.
Right,
this is one where we do find out, but just...
But when they wrote the episode, of course, they did not know that.
Yeah.
They wanted to end it on that way, and it does lead, like a Twilight Zone episode or something like that, might lead the viewer to reflect on it and to ask those kind of questions in that very interesting Star Trek sci-fi way that Star Wars could never match, because Star Wars is such a limited concept. Well, sorry, Star Wars, I love you, but...
a lot of your fantasy adventure type properties are not going to have that ability, though.
True.
But just get an idea of how this depiction of the mirror universe, if we're going to talk about like the rest of the depictions in Star Trek, how it would compare to Star Trek Discovery, which would just be 10 years before this. And I think we would really need to go back to Star Trek Enterprise,
right,
which would have been a century before what we saw on Discovery, and a little more than a century before what we saw in the original series. That version of the mirror universe... that we saw on Enterprise.
I'm going to interrupt you for a second.
Okay.
Do you want to hear why I think the mirror universe has stuck around before we get into this next iteration of it?
Sure.
All right, I'm going to bust it out. I got to look at a list here. Yeah, before we get to Enterprise, which moves a little bit away from the deeper stuff and into more of the fun stuff. So here's my 5 reasons why the mirror universe concept has proved so popular, endlessly also like we've seen it in comics, we've seen it in other sci-fi properties, endlessly retooled. All right, you with me here?
Yeah.
All right. Number 1, it's just fun to watch people be evil. You get to watch all the people who are usually good guys. They get to play evil. It's like playing a villain in a play and Shakespeare and all that stuff.
It's fun for the actors.
Fun for the actors. Fun for you to watch. It's kind of cool. Like, let's face it. Evil Sulu is cool. Uhura gets to be cool by emulating the killers of her world and like threatening Sulu right back. So that's 1. Fun to watch evil. 2, I think there's an interesting, whenever somebody crosses over, there is an interesting what would you do kind of scenario thing, like almost like in a video game sense, like you're in a moral conundrum. Do you try and help or hurt? Do you just try and get out of there? And how do you balance all those factors? So there's a little bit of, I think, of a what would I do, and if confronted with this, aside from the moral, the question of like finding out about your own evil self or whatever. 3 is, I think it's fun because you actually do get to see these moral questions wrestled with in a much more literal way than you could ever in the real world. So yes, you actually have Kirk arguing why is good better than evil, and later on Deep Space Nine will get into some of these ideas too. My 4th one is that characters can die. There's just a higher body count, so it has the same sort of, a little bit of the lurid appeal of, like I mentioned, the Marvel and DC's alternate world stories where they can kill off characters. And then lastly, the sexy time. There's hot chicks, there's buff guys showing off their chests and their guns.
Yeah, people either have like sex slaves or they have like sex employees that serve under them.
Yeah,
a lot. In this
and everybody
universe.
is showing more skin. There is simply put more on display.
Yeah, the men show off their arms, the women show off their bellies.
Yeah. Varying degrees, they kind of reined it in a little bit. Discovery had it a little bit less sexist and came up with kind of just more, I'm just going to say fascist-y kind of uniforms. But they do kind of put sex front and center in some way, shape, or form. A little bit of lurid pulp. which is, I think, a good lead-in to Enterprise, because Enterprise kind of runs with it.
Yeah, and so I'm just going to cover the Enterprise episodes real quickly, because it was a two-parter, but I will say that In a Mirror Darkly Parts 1 and 2, that's widely considered to be like the best Enterprise episode, if you can count both of them as one episode. I guess I should say the best Enterprise story. I love it. I don't know if I would say it's my favorite or if it's the best, because it does come off as a little fan servicey.
It's not.
But
it's not deep. And the original Star Trek, the original Mirror Mirror episode on the original series is like, it has lots of fun stuff in it, but it actually does have some depth to it. And the Deep Space Nine episodes generally have some depth to them. They ask some interesting questions. This one, you kind of you're really rolling with the evil fun.
Yeah, and it's just like a super fun love letter to the original series.
Yeah.
Not just Mirror Mirror, but it references several other episodes.
When you get to see early on that the Doctor, along with Phlox...
Dr. Phlox and Malcolm Reed are building the Agony.
They created it, and they're so proud of it.
Which is cool, because that's supposed to be like one of the things in Enterprise, is that when the show first came out, we were told, like, oh yeah, these characters are going to invent all the cool stuff you see in Star Trek, like the phasers, the force fields, everything else. And so it's like, okay, well, the Mirror Universe version, they're building the Agony booth.
Yeah. Good job, Phlox.
They're torturing a Tellarite, and then like they're not even sure what he was guilty of.
Yeah.
Like someone brings up the question, like, why is this guy being tortured again? I don't know. All Tellarites are guilty of something.
Yep. Here's the thing. Like, if you think about that on the surface, it's horrible. A lot of people get tortured in the Mirror Universe. It's not treated with like a ton of weight. They even torture before that episode. Those episodes are out. A Tholian.
Yeah. But I mean, like, it's part of the fun. Like in Lord of the Rings, a lot of people get stabbed with swords and then die in a pile of their own blood and their own shit.
Well, I will often, but he would never mention that. Tolkien never.
Yeah, Tolkien would never mention. But yeah, if you get stabbed with a sword, that's what happens.
Yep.
You fall down and die in a pile of your own blood and shit.
I often go to the example of Raiders of the Lost Ark, but you could say it of all the movies. They evoke Nazis on that very surface level of them being the ultimate pulp bad guys. They're the ultimate punchable bad guys.
Yeah, but you're not seeing,
they're
like,
never going to
the
mention the Holocaust.
Yeah.
And so likewise, you can have some fun with torture in these episodes, and it's true.
And I think this line of
I guess the viewer gets to let himself go and be irresponsible. That's what I once heard somebody say about writing about role-playing games and why so many people they end up playing characters that are kind of roguish and a little bit sleazy, is that the role-playing games give you a freedom to be irresponsible. Well, these Mirror Universe episodes kind of have allowed you to vicariously enjoy that, too.
Yeah, and the cool thing with these episodes is that they are set entirely in the Mirror Universe, so there is no crossover.
Right, and Enterprise is unique in that. It's just all bad all the time.
And they had those great opening credits.
Oh, man, so we got to quick say, the opening...
The teaser,
The teaser before that is it the actual footage from Star Trek
It starts off
First
with
Contact?
Actual footage from Star Trek First Contact,
The otherwise great scene in First Contact where Zefram Cochrane is there for First Contact when the Vulcans arrive.
That is the nativity scene of Star Trek.
Yeah, you're right. I like it. It's
I think that's actually how Ron Moore describes it.
It was both kind of fun. You see the Vulcan try and have to do a handshake. You see Zefram Cochrane kind of awkwardly try and do the salute and not able to, and it's very sweet but also very heartfelt.
But not in this universe.
Not in this universe.
In this universe,
it's all the same right up until he's about to shake hands. In which Zefram Cochrane whips out a sawed-off shotgun and blows him away.
His ass.
And then they're like, loot the ship or whatever.
Yeah,
they're like,
take everything.
Yeah, and all the people that were standing around in awe in the original one, it's like they all grab guns and stuff like that and weapons, and they just pour into the Vulcan ship to loot it.
That was so great how then we cut to the Enterprise opening credits. Instead of showing us the history of exploration of
it's
mankind
like
exploring.
The history of warfare.
Yeah, then you see that carried into the stars, into space.
Yeah, you'll see nuclear submarines, biplanes shooting it out, and then nuclear submarines, and then you get to see the rise of the Terran Empire taking over with this very martial music playing in the background, very very fascist. It's like the music from old fascist propaganda movies. almost. You know, it's real, ominous and, like, unstoppable.
So, like, besides some of the books and non-canon stuff that had come out, this was the first time we saw the Terran Empire since Mirror Mirror. And this is the first time, like, on the show they actually explored, like, well, Terran Empire, that means, it's Earth.
Right, Terran Empire specifically. We'd been to the Mirror Universe before in Deep Space Nine, but at that point the Terran Empire had collapsed.
Yeah, so this is, like,
Which is sad.
Yes, very tragic. But, yeah, this is the first time...
Here, their height.
Where you kind of, like, define... what that world would be like, more than the brief glimpse we got in Mirror Mirror. This is the first time where you really touch on the Terrans having their xenophobia, and how if you have an empire based around Earth, being Terran or Terra, Earth, so you would make all your, instead of having a federation where you're uniting with aliens, you're forming an empire where you make everyone submit to you.
Yeah.
And
did they ever say much? They do touch on this, that Vulcans are second-class citizens too.
Yes, because...
In fact, it'll become very important before the end of the two-parter.
So Jonathan Archer in this universe, he still has resentment to Vulcans, but it's kind of like... You get the impression that in their revisionist history, Vulcans were coming to invade Earth in the events of Star Trek First Contact. And the humans, they were able to reverse engineer the Vulcan technology and use it to conquer Vulcan, and went on to...
Do you get the impression the Vulcans were coming to conquer? I don't quite remember that.
No, but that's what Archer says.
Ah, okay.
And you get...
Do you think that's just like the Terran propaganda?
That's what I said. Like,
sorry.
Revisionist history.
Ah, I see what you're saying. I thought you meant revisionist in the sense that it's not the Prime Universe history. But you mean it's literally propaganda.
Literally revised history.
Got it.
And they have, like, Orions and Tellarites and Andorians all serving as slaves.
Yes.
But they're still used in Starfleet and, like, the command structure. So
you get the impression it's kind of like, as long as you're useful to us, we can find a role for you, but just know your place.
And this is also the first time that they establish that there is a rebellion fighting against the Empire.
Right.
And this is where it kind of goes into Star Wars territory, because you have a rebellion fighting against the Empire.
A little bit. Their rebellion fares more poorly than Star Wars traditionally does.
Well, the rebellion's doing well. The Captain Forrest, because he's...
Right.
Instead of...
There's a victory. They've recently had a victory, but you find out it was not what... That was propaganda.
Yeah, that wasn't even a victory.
Right. And of course, Archer is not captain.
He's first officer, and instead of there being an Admiral Forrest, there is a Captain Forrest. So you get back into that TOS, Mirror, that assassinate the guy ahead of you to get in command type of thing.
A lot of Captain's Woman stuff going on in this episode.
Yeah, with Hoshi being the Captain's Woman.
Yeah. And this is actually... She too will get a major role. Also, this is extremely lurid. It's as pulp as it gets, because Hoshi is like... I feel like she's half naked for both episodes.
Yeah. But it's kind of hard to complain about it. Cause
I cannot complain.
Linda Park is super sexy in these episodes.
I know. I want to be a good Tex-Trek feminist and say that, geez, these episodes are exploitive.
No, yeah, they're obviously problematic.
Yes, but I cannot also help but I guess this is one of those cases where I'm like, well, my privilege worked out on this one.
You're saying that you feel guilty for jacking off to it.
I do. I feel guilty because I'm jacking off right now. Just thinking about it.
The audio only people are going to believe you,
though. No, but yeah, she's gorgeous in it. And T'Pol is not horrible on the eyes. It did occur to me that when you see scarred up people, it's the dudes. Sulu is scarred up. Trip has a burned face.
Oh yeah, because there's no safety regulation, so he's been working next to these radioactive warp reactors.
Yeah.
He looked like Captain Pike after he got his injury.
Yeah, that's true. I wonder if that was...
This being the TOS love letter episode.
Yeah. It actually makes some kind of sense.
Because we also get a connection to the Tholian web.
That overtly, for Tholian web, I guess, has to unofficially count as a Mirror Universe episode in that it sets this one up. And it occurs simultaneously with it.
Yeah, so we learned that the the USS Defiant seen in the TOS episode, The Tholian Web.
No relation to the Deep Space Nine Defiant.
Yeah, a different ship.
A Constitution-class ship.
That it disappeared. We don't know where it went. We know it left the universe, went to a different space and time. So it showed up a century earlier in the mirror universe.
Yep.
Still in Tholian space. First Officer Archer on the ISS Enterprise in X-01 learns about this. He is going to attempt to capture the ship from the Tholians. He will have a ship that is 100 years more advanced, and he can use it to win the war and stop the rebellion. I think that's pretty much all he was looking to do at that point. Was he wanted to be captain of a ship. Yep. He wanted to serve the Empire and defeat the rebellion.
Right, and nothing would secure your position of power better than having a ship that's 100 years in the future and destroying the rebellion. I mean, it's a good plan. So, I gotta say, it's a good plan.
Long story short, he does stage a coup. He takes over the Enterprise. He gets to the Defiant. In the process of capturing the Defiant from the Tholians, the NX-01 Enterprise is destroyed. And that's the end of the first part of this two-parter, is them getting on the Defiant, and we see that gorgeous TOS recreation of a bridge.
Yeah.
They start wearing the TOS-style uniforms.
Yep.
And the alien characters that are serving the Terrans, you have T'Pol and Phlox, and they kind of...
And also some of the Vulcan handlers from Enterprise.
Yeah, they bring in Savol instead of being a Vulcan diplomat. He has a Spock beard.
Right.
And yeah, he's serving on the other NX class ship, the Avenger. And and this Archer is such a damaged person. He's got like this huge chip on his shoulder that he's super insecure.
Right, which is elements of the Prime Universe Archer, but if it had eaten him away completely. If in the first episode he kind of recovers some of his that sense of what his dad lost and what the Vulcans took from humanity. In the very first episode, he kind of gets that back. This sort of imagines what if it ate away at him and damaged him permanently.
And he is finally concludes that he needs to just take over the ship and use it to not only win the war against the rebellion, but take over the whole empire.
Yeah.
And just become the new emperor.
That don't work out so well.
But no, it doesn't work out. They do stop the rebellion that Phlox and T'Pol had put together, though.
Yeah, that was pretty dark.
He also fights a Gorn.
Right, and it's a brand new CG Gorn. Yeah. I really liked this Gorn, I have to say.
I didn't think it looked great, but I was just happy to see them using it. This is the only time we've seen a Gorn outside of Arena. And
it's like a skeleton. Yeah, you're right. So and they they made it very large. It had those retrograde legs, looked almost like a velociraptor. And it was pretty wily. It kills a bunch of crew members. It talks to them.
Yeah, it's talking on the communicator, like the Gorn.
Yeah, it lures them into some traps, and then and ultimately is Archer fights it.
Yeah,
he has a physical fight with it,
and he uses the gravity plating to defeat it.
But I gotta say, the Gorn acquitted itself quite well, and I was happy to see the Gorn kick so much ass in its time.
Yeah, but unfortunately, this Jonathan Archer does not get to take over the Empire because he is poisoned by Hoshi. Yep. And she wins.
Yeah, she had already been, she's shifting alliances all over the place. Definitely, as soon as, she helps, or sees the writing on the wall, I guess, with Archer, she cozies up to him as his captain's woman, but she's more ambitious than expected, and, takes him out.
And so the episode ends with her return to Earth on board the USS Defiant, the most advanced ship anyone on Earth has seen, and she is declaring herself Empress Hoshi Sato. Yeah.
It's pretty big, and it's a dark way to, it's both kind of triumphant for her, but it's a super dark way to end, because it's a, essentially big victory for the Terrans. You've seen, I guess arguably the star of the show, Jonathan Archer, get taken out, even though it was the evil him, the one who, when he read the files alongside Hoshi, right, of their mirror counterparts, of their prime counterparts, they're like scoffing and laughing. He's like, "Oh my god, he's an explorer."
Yeah, what a nerd!
Yeah, they were just like disgusted with their counterparts and didn't want to like know. They were like using it almost like blackmail against each other.
So the cool thing is that if you actually freeze frame and like look at the text on the screen, it says that the Prime Jonathan Archer becomes president of the United Federation of Planets, and that he dies the day after the 1701 Enterprise launches in 2245.
Is that canonical?
And, well, it was on screen.
Okay. I just wondered if they'd referenced it.
It's a cool idea that he would live long enough to see like Robert April get command of
right, like maybe almost
Enterprise.
like on some level he was holding out. He's like, I can't die.
He's like Odysseus's dog.
Yeah.
He's like, I just gotta hold the baton long enough to hand it off to this next Enterprise captain, and now I can die. My work is done.
Yeah,
I like it.
I do too. I hope it's canonical
cheesy,
and gets referenced a little bit somewhere. You know, Star Trek doesn't have too many of those kind of poetic type moments, so I think they can get away with it.
And this Enterprise episode, though, looking at it now after what we saw on Discovery, this actually did the most world building for the mirror universe we see in Discovery, because this is another trip to the mirror universe where we see an emperor. Yeah. And we get to see alien rebellion fighting against them. Mm-hmm. And here they're so much more xenophobic because they're not allowing non-humans to serve in Starfleet. Or they're pretty much just like, they're literally eating them with like the Kelpians.
Right.
But yeah, what we saw with like the refugees that were hanging out on that one planet where Sarek and Mirror Sarek and...
They're talking about in Discovery.
Yeah. And... He was chilling with some Tellarites and Andorians and, of course, Klingons. Yep. Because they had Mirror Voke there as well. Right. And so that Starfleet, or that Terran Empire was way more aggressive to aliens. So I am curious, what happens between there and the original series, because we know that at some point, like Spock, and keep in mind he's half human, but he's allowed to be a first officer on a ship. Right. So, what we know from Enterprise, Discovery, and TOS, how do you think that all flows together from show to show to show?
So let's see. After chronologically, Enterprise is the first. Right? Yeah. Hoshi ascends the mantle of Empress of the Terran Empire at the peak of their xenophobia. She doesn't show any sort of signs of sympathy for aliens in that, does she?
No.
So we have to presume
she doesn't show any signs of sympathy. I don't know. I kind of think that she might have had some genuine feelings for Captain Forrest.
They kind of made that out early on, but then that could have just been she was playing him.
Yeah.
She definitely was a good manipulator.
Yeah, it's so good that I don't know if she was manipulating the audience or if we're supposed to take that as sincerity.
It's true. At no point do we see her, Captain's Woman's log, in which she tells us.
Perhaps she doesn't know herself at this point.
Whoa. That's such a deep character insight, Fatheree. So well done. But reasonable. But sometime between there and TOS, they soften a little bit on the alien factor, and maybe that's just that. I'm going to say that maybe in the recognizing just how dangerous, because T'Pol, I don't know that T'Pol had been part of the rebellion. Do we actually see her death?
No, and I think
or Phlox
because
either, right?
I think they were saving that for if they did a season 5 and did the Mirror Universe again, they would want to pick up on that.
All right, I'm going to suggest something kind of dark since she was leading a rebellion and ostensibly.
I'm assuming they were both killed though.
Now I'm going to say that she talked her way out of it at the last moment and made the case for Vulcans as allies.
But in Discovery, they're not allies.
Oh, that's true. That's true. Are there any aliens shown in Discovery?
Yeah, but they're all they're either food or they're refugees on the planet.
I meant any aliens that were given serious roles.
No, and what we see on all the Imperial ships on Discovery, they're all completely human crewed.
All right, so we go all the way up through Discovery's time. Somewhere between there and the short journey to Kirk's era. And this is purely here's the thing. They weren't planning all this stuff. They didn't have necessarily a big picture in mind for it. But we would have to assume that somewhere in there, in that 10-year gap, something happen to make aliens seem a little bit more viable.
See, I think there's very fertile ground there for a story.
So here's what I'm going to suggest. What it was. We know they lost Georgiou, right? We don't know what happens afterwards, but probably there's some massive turmoil for the Terran Empire, and maybe in order to create stability, they had to ally. They gritted their teeth doing it. They hated to do it, but they're like, all right, we need some Vulcans, some logical Vulcans to help us find ways to stabilize. They're going to be advisors, and some other stuff started cropping up.
But I would kind of like to think that these are like the Uncle Tom Vulcans.
Yes. The Uncle Cybok.
Cybok gets enough shit. Don't give him this. I want to see Mirror Universe Cybok, though.
Yeah, I don't know what he would be. I want to see Mirror Universe versions of those hippie Vulcans from Enterprise. You know what they'd be? They'd be like Charles Manson cultists.
Oh my god, that's awesome! And they all have Spock goatees. Oh no, that's the fertile ground for a story.
Think about it. I can be bought cheap.
But I do think it's interesting to see like these 3 different depictions of the Terran Empire.
Yeah. And
I can see how like the dots connect. But there are some question marks about like, well, and you know, to me as a big Star Trek continuity guy,
yep.
You know, when I see those, a lot of times I think, well, those are either opportunities for me to try to create headcanon just to entertain myself,
right? Or
I think that they're good opportunities for the creators, or for even like, you know, the novelist and comic book people, you know, whoever, they can come in and fill in those gaps. I think there's some cool stuff they could explore there.
I agree.
And I'm glad that we're seeing the Mirror Universe so heavily focused on right now with the comics and with Discovery. And I think because that is one of those things from the original series that is most iconic about Star Trek.
It really is.
And I can see how it might get too exposed, even though like I think it's awesome that we see the Terran Empire so much, and please don't agonize me. But I do kind of worry if like we'll see too much of it. But as long as there's
because it would be so cool to keep it mysterious too. What's cooler than mystery?
Yeah, that's true. But I'm hoping that we see a return to it in maybe season 2 or season 3 of Discovery, because I like their handle on it.
At the very least, it seems like we know. So Mirror Georgiou is active in the Discovery universe. She seems like the kind of person who might want to check in, if only to know where all the pieces are.
Yeah, because we do have her in the Prime universe going forward,
as well as some unanswered questions about, say, Mirror Lorca.
Yeah, even though, like, I'm not convinced that him going into the spore fireball. Mm-hmm. Like, a lot of people are thinking, like, oh, he's not dead, he'll come back. I'm like, I can see him just being dead. Like, I don't need him to come back.
It's just that it left the opportunity there. Should they want to pick up on it?
Yeah.
But yeah, there's I do think there's still some untapped stories here. I'm pretty sure it's not going to be the focus in any way, shape, or form of season 2 of Discovery, but a little check-in would be nice. Yeah, you know, we got to get Kelly back.
Well, we never saw the true Kelly. We only saw pretend Kelly. So.
It's true. If they went back, it might be an opportunity for a little bit of lurid fun of seeing what horrible things they're up to.
I think, for some obvious reasons, the Mirror Universe is topical now. I think a lot of people feel like the world has gone to the Mirror Universe.
It absolutely feels that way. I want someone to make the impassioned speech Kirk does, and I want it to work. It has to work. That's the thing. If it doesn't work, then it's no good. So we need that person. I don't know who that person is. I think that person is Kirk.
Well, the right man can change the present.
Whoa, shit. Yeah, unfortunately, I think we have to mobilize tens of millions of right men and women to vote. In order to do that, I have to probably work within a system.
It would help to have a... I'm not going to get into that.
You came for Tex-Trek politics, and we're bringing it. No, we're not going to. But yes, I do think it absolutely has that I mean, who does not feel disoriented right now? I think even if you are like, this fascism thing is pretty cool, I kind of like it. It has to feel disorienting to like see all our allies turned against us. I mean, and like in such a span of time that I wouldn't believe it in a fiction story. It seems ridiculous. And yet, here we are. So yes, maybe there are some actual life lessons to be learned from the mirror universe.
Or at least there's some cathartic stuff in there to enjoy.
Yeah, if nothing else,
if the world is going to burn, you might as well be entertained.
You may relate more than you ever have to Kirk or Cisco or any of the other people who traveled over.
But I think that
we've talked about the foundations. That's all the big stuff.
Yeah, that's all of the depictions of the mirror universe in the Star Trek episodes. So that's there you go. There's all of your mirror universe coverage. So I hope y'all enjoyed that.
More! We want more! We demand it!
I'm not sure what else there is to say. We've covered every episode that shows the Terran Empire. It's really just something that exists in those episodes of the original series Discovery and Enterprise.
What about the plight of the Terran people on Deep Space Nine that you mentioned? That sounded interesting.
Oh man, it's like a whole nother 5 episodes. Do we really need to?
No one ever wants to talk about when things were bad for the Terrans. Sure, you'll talk about when Bajor was occupied or when Romulus blew up, but when something bad happens to the Terrans, no one wants to even acknowledge it. Because you assholes have caused untold pain and suffering across the universe, so don't you dare try to play the victims now, you...
Fatheree, shut the hell up! I can't take any more outrageous Okana! That Jerry Lee Lewis crap with Data!
Okay! Oh, well... actually, Dave, I believe it sounds like on the next installment of Tex-Trek, we will be talking about the Mirror Universe episodes of Deep Space Nine, the ones that show the Terran characters after the fall of the Terran Empire.
Oh, right.
And so I'm sure we're all looking forward to that.
Yes.
And until then, and until next time, long live the Empire, y'all! Thank all of you so much for checking out this installment of Tex-Trek. I hope you enjoyed it. Please be sure to like our YouTube videos and subscribe to our channel. Audio-only version of episodes are available at our website, www.tex-trek.com. Please check out our site, especially if you just want an audio-only podcast. We have that available for you. Y'all can also keep up with us online. You can follow us on Twitter, @TXTrek, or you can check us out on Facebook at www.facebook.com/tex-trek. Please, by all means, let us know what you think by dropping a comment anywhere you see fit. We definitely want to hear your feedback. Let us know what you liked and what you would like to see more of, what you would like to see differently going forward. If you want to email me directly, go ahead. I can be reached at fathereeactual@tex-trek.com. Thank all y'all again. Take care.